All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another CBA broadcast. My name is Steve. It's my buddy Frank.
Hello, everybody. So we're here today to bring you another English commentary on a Chinese Basketball Association game. We're basically in the second week, I guess, of the restart of the CBA, and we are bringing you the third game in our attempt to bring some live, or not live, but professional basketball action to you if you've been getting cabin fever over the last few months. And hopefully this will tide you over until the NBA actually starts.
Yeah, and like we've said many times, we're not professionals, just here to have some fun. But hopefully what we would like to accomplish is for you guys to better understand the CBA and also the differences between the CBA and the NBA. And also hope that you guys can gain a little bit of perspective on how the American players are performing in the CBA. And lastly, better understand some of the teams and player stories in the CBA.
Yep, so today we will be bringing you a game between the Shanghai Sharks and the Beijing Ducks. And this game was played a few hours ago. And these are two fairly interesting teams, and we'll get into their stories a little bit more as we get into the actual game action. So maybe without further ado, we'll get right into the game itself.
Let's get started.
All right, as promised, we are bringing you a CBA game between the Beijing Ducks and the Shanghai Sharks. This game took place in the early afternoon today, which is the 28th of June on a Sunday. And we have tip-off, and Max Zhang from Shanghai wins the tip, and we'll get into him a little bit later as we go along in our game calling. He's he has some American experience, and he's one of the centers on the Chinese national team. The Shanghai team is swinging the ball around, and they have a pretty little pick play that got Max the ball under the basket, and as he tried to go up, he got hacked.
Yeah, so I think for this game, the real focus here is on Beijing, given that they are in playoff contention, especially for the seeding between 3 to 11. It's very tight. And Beijing has started the restart 2-2. They beat two very tough opponents, both of the games that we called.
2-1, right?
2-2.
Okay.
They beat both two very tough opponents, one in Xinjiang, one in Liaoning. And then they lost to Nanjing, and they also lost to another pretty strong team.
Okay.
And so they're 2-2. I think the star for Beijing, as we know, is Jeremy Lin. He has not had a very particularly good shooting to start the restart. But when he's been looking for a shot, they've won games. In games where he's taken less than 10 shots, they've lost both games. So I just think the key to this game is still, again, can Jeremy look to create his own offense, thereby creating opportunities for his teammates?
And we see that an example of it right here as he takes a ball down into the paint, and he gets hacked and fouled and ends up on the floor. Beijing, as Steve mentioned, started this new season 2-2. Let's call it abbreviated season 2-2, where Shanghai is 1-3 in its 4 games, and Shanghai is well out of playoff contention. But there's a lot of history between these two cities, Shanghai and Beijing. As we see, Jeremy Lin fake a shot and pass the ball down under to the Beijing center, Tyreek, who is Nigerian Chinese and the first mixed race player in the CBA. And this is a very pretty dump-off pass, and Tyreek gets fouled on his way up, just like the Max Zhang, the Shanghai center, got on the other side. So both teams are trying to be aggressive in the beginning to go outside in, and their big men end up their first possession with free throws.
Yeah, and if you've watched our previous games, Frank and I are pretty big fans of Tyreek. He's a young, decent-sized big man, and to start the CBA season this year, he didn't get much playing time because in their rotation they had another foreign big, Justin Hamilton, but due to the fact that Justin Hamilton hasn't been able to return from the U.S., he's getting a lot more rotation minutes, and it just feels like him and Jeremy have found a little bit of chemistry.
Yeah, and also let's watch this game. Yeah, very nice turnaround, bank off the backboard. And we can also see that both teams have started the game with a pretty aggressive defense. Both teams started with a full court press in the first possession. And second Beijing possession, Shanghai has had a one-man three-quarter court press, but Jeremy Lin beats that rather easily and ends up with a shot from the middle of the lane. A little right-handed hook for two more points.
That was Fang Shuo.
Oh, excuse me, Fang Shuo. Okay.
Yeah. He's Also a very good guard for the Beijing Ducks. He's one of the guards in the rotation for the Chinese national team.
Yeah.
That was a nice little nifty move in the paint.
Yep, we have several Chinese national team players in this game today as well, as we see. As Steve corrected me rightly, that was Fang Shuo taking that little hook shot. And Tyreek holds the ball and drops it off to Zhu Yanxi, another one of our favorites during our last couple of broadcasts. Power forward center with outside range.
Yeah, we just love those space stretchers.
Yeah. And this one, I believe, is a Jeremy Lin high arching shot from, Fang Shuo again. Wow, their shot motions are so similar. But as Fang Shuo cut from under the basket and gets the ball back.
The difference is Jeremy's got the arm sleeve.
Yeah, okay. I'll try to catch these little things. Block shot from 3 by Beijing, and Tyreek picks up the loose ball, and Beijing is back on the attack. I think in past games...
There you go, that's Jeremy.
That one was Jeremy Lin, okay, finally. Yeah. But in past games, we've seen that Jeremy Lin has taken quite a bit of pounding, and maybe this game they're trying to take off some of the pressure from him, because I believe in both of the previous games we called, Fang Shuo came off the bench, and he had a rotation with Udo the last time we watched these games, whereas Jeremy Lin was more paired up with Tyreek. And Shanghai comes up with another cut and shot off the backboard. I think of the 6 points that they've scored so far, 2 were from the paint, and the other 4 points, 2 baskets were from the paint, and the other 2 were off of free throws from the paint shot. So they're definitely going inside very aggressively early.
Yes. And also, as we previously mentioned, Beijing's style play is very slow paced. They are one of the lowest scoring teams in the league. Shanghai is also third to last in scoring in the league, so I don't know if we'll see a ton of points in this game, but in the 2 games that we did watch with Beijing, it very much seemed like they controlled the tempo against 2 very high power offenses and were able to pull out the victory. So unfortunately we didn't see their 2 losses. I'm not really sure what happened in those games.
It's okay. I mean, if anybody is interested in some of these teams and want to watch more, please let us know, and we can, of course, pull out the footage from those games and bring it to you. But in the meantime, we are picking games that seem interesting and or competitive to try to explain to you what's happening. And we see that Shanghai launched the 3-pointer from the right wing position, and the ball got stuck on the hoop, which doesn't really happen that often in professional basketball, but it did. And it didn't end up in a jump ball. I'm actually not sure if the CBA has like a possession arrow issue, as we watched Beijing bring the ball up to court, 2 consecutive poor passes. One that got Jia Xiaochuan off his feet, so that he had to swing the ball back to Tyreek, who wasn't past half court yet, and that results in a turnover. And we've seen 2 turnovers by Beijing and 1 offensive foul by Shanghai, as well as 1 ball stuck on the rim, which has been a consistent theme of what we've been calling these last 2 games, is a lot of sloppy play. But I think today we see better execution. Well, there was also that near 24-second shot clock violation as I talk about execution, so another point to watch as this game continues. And Fang Shuo takes a shot from the baseline, long 2, that bounces off the rim, but as Beijing was going up for the offensive rebound, Jia Xiaochuan was pushed from behind the back.
I like Fang Shuo. He's got the poise. He plays within himself. I mean, he's not the most athletic player out there, but doesn't turn the ball over much. Really, is a very cerebral guard. So. That's CJ. Sorry, that's Ray McCollum.
Yeah, Ray McCollum.
Number 22 for the Shanghai Sharks. He's their foreign player. He's about a 6'1" guard. Actually, former McDonald's All-American in 2010. And coming out of high school, he signed with Detroit Mercer because his dad was the head coach of Detroit Mercer. It was probably the biggest prospect Detroit Mercer ever signed. He had a pretty good NCAA career. Was the Horizon League Player of the Year, and was a second-round pick in, I believe, 2013. How did he end up in the CBA? He is with the rebound again. So he actually spent about 5 seasons bouncing around the G League and the NBA. and then ended up taking his talents to Europe actually for 2 years, and was a pretty good player in Europe, and then now recently just came in after the. We'll get into Jimmer Fredette in a little bit, but is basically the replacement for Jimmer Fredette. So pretty good guard, but it was a nice pass there.
Okay, now we are back, and as we saw in that flurry of activity before we cut to the timeout, Shanghai hit a couple of consecutive baskets following turnovers by Beijing, and they have a 10-8 lead. As Beijing also has a nice little pick and roll between Jeremy Lin and number 21 Chang Lin for another layup. So again, I think this game shows a lot more execution than the two that we did before, and it's good to see after about a week. And this is Li Gen, a player who actually was with Beijing, I believe, during Beijing's heyday, who's now signed with Shanghai. But he got free under the basket and tried to take another layup and got fouled.
Yeah, Li Gen number 1 for Shanghai. Actually was one of my favorite players when he played for Beijing. I compare him a little bit to Charles Barkley.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Little undersized, power forward,
but thicker,
strong post moves.
Definitely thicker player.
Yeah.
This is not a body type or let's say player type that are common for Chinese players.
But more explosive actually than typical Chinese players in the CBA. He's definitely one of the more explosive athletes.
Yeah. And 5-second violation, which you don't really see every day until usually at the very end of games. But Shanghai suffered one of these, turns the ball over. Beijing is handling the ball in the wing. Zhai Xiaochuan drops the ball off to Chang Lin, who tries to set a pick.
Some good movement, actually.
Yeah, there's we see.
No.
You
missed the bunny.
Yeah, that was.
Oh man.
That was Fang Shuo who had a. Okay, that was a walk.
That definitely looked like a walk.
Yeah, so that was again a flurry of activity. Beijing got 2 attempts right under the basket by Fang Shuo, who missed them both, unfortunately, and Zhai Xiaochuan stole the ensuing pass forward, but unfortunately,
got called for traveling.
Yeah, he was not able to control his body and took too many steps.
So the matchup between Li Gen and Zhai Xiaochuan is pretty interesting because when Li Gen first signed with Beijing, he was the starting small forward. And then they won a championship that first year. In the second year, he came off the bench because Zhai Xiaochuan moved into the starting lineup, but they still won a championship, so that turned out to be a good decision.
Yeah.
Thereafter, Li Gen then went to Xinjiang, and I believe won at least one championship with Xinjiang as well. Yeah, very good player. But now he's a little bit older. He's in his 12th season in the CBA, and he's again coming off the bench.
Yeah. So we see Shanghai with an offensive rebound putback that puts them up 2 points. Beijing comes back and tries to hit a wing 3 that rolls around and comes off. And Ray McCollum has the ball. So we have number 10 who tried to make a dribble move, and he's called for a travel. So this is Dong Hanlin, a 6'6" shooting guard, and same man who got the offensive rebound putback just a few seconds earlier. Exactly. I don't really know if this stats that I'm looking at are reasonable. He looks like at least like a power forward type, like 6'8" to 6'10" sized. As Fang Shuo handles the ball up top. Again, we see that Jeremy Lin is giving up the primary ball handling duties for much of this game. He comes off a pick on the side and hits a free throw line jumper for 2 more points, and we are knotted again at 12 points apiece.
That's a great way to find your shooting touch, is to shoot those free throw jumpers.
Yeah. Shanghai now holds the ball just inside the 3-point line, and it's passed around and handled by number 33. Another high pick and roll, but the pick didn't really take, but the entry pass was not bad, and I guess our I don't know if I should call him a shooting guard, number 10 Dong.
Let's call him a forward.
Yeah, he gets fouled over the back before he is able to put up a shot.
Stat sheets that Frank printed out, it must have been a typo.
I don't know, blame the websites. It was not my fault.
Yeah.
It's never my fault, Steve.
Oh, we got a substitution.
Yeah, we also had several shots of the coaches, and that's interesting to bring up because the Shanghai coaches, there was a basic coaching change. They decided to let the head coach, the foreign head coach, and unfortunately I don't have his name in front of me, had him step aside, and they decided to let Liu Wei, who used to be a very well-known player for the Shanghai Sharks, take over as the coach. But I don't think he.
Yeah, Liu Wei's favorite basketball teammate was Yao Ming.
Yeah.
Not only did they play together professionally on the Shanghai Sharks together, but also on the national team.
Yeah.
That was Yao's favorite point guard to play with.
So Jeremy Lin on the other side takes the ball, and he had a mismatch, and he beat his man off the dribble. Was met by another defender, tried to dump the ball off to the baseline, and his player misses a three.
Oh, that's a
and
nice
coming
finish.
back, we see a beautiful left-handed layup down the lane by the Shanghai guard, and now Beijing is taking the ball out from under its basket.
Yeah, number 13. That is not number 13.
So we still see the pressure in the backcourt by Shanghai as Fang Shuo brings the ball out of the backcourt. 14 seconds, now 10 left. Jeremy Lin drops loses his footing. But a beautiful shot is the number 33, the defender from Shanghai gambles, and Fang Shuo gets wide open for another free throw line jumper.
Okay, that's a nice finish again.
Yeah,
that's
another
good defense.
Yep. Let's take a look. Number 33, Luo Hanshen.
He's also 32 years old.
6'2" point guard.
25 years old.
Yeah. Okay.
Juicy for
There
three.
we go. Yeah, a double team of Jeremy Lin, who gets the ball to the power forward center that we mentioned last time. In the first game, we kind of compared him to a really, really poor man's Porzingis.
Yeah, that
but
was
he's
inaccurate.
Yeah, but
We take that back.
As I mentioned later, maybe we compare him to Luke Cornett. But point is, he's
a rich man's Luke Cornett. No, I'm just kidding.
Big man that can defend the basket a little bit, but who's definitely very comfortable with his three-point stroke. So we see him sink the three-pointers. And now I believe Beijing has a 1-point lead as Jeremy Lin goes to the bench and Ekpe Udo comes in.
Yeah. This is going to actually... One of the reasons I was really looking forward to this game, and we'll get into this in the second quarter about the foreign substitution rules, etc., is that the previous two games we watched, neither team had a foreign player active. But for this game, because Shanghai has Ray McCollum active, we're actually going to get to see six man quarters of Udo and Jeremy Lin. So I think we're going to get some minutes with the two of them both on the court.
Right.
It'll be nice to see them together.
Right. Just one minor correction. It's not that neither team had a foreign player. It's that the other team that Beijing played didn't have a foreign player.
Right.
So neither of Beijing's opponents. But again, we'll get into those rules later. And Shanghai comes back and hit a wing three, and now Beijing is facing a 2-point deficit. Ball's passed to Zhu Yanxi, who has a big pass to Udo, who tries to take about a baseline 6-footer. But the ball comes out short, and I guess he fouled. He went over the back on the offensive rebound.
His offensive game reminds me of myself. It does not say much.
And that last three by Beijing was from
yeah,
Lincoln.
that's classic.
Yeah, little push in the back. That was pretty obvious. So Udo's, I think his defensive impact is obviously quite significant, but on offense, he's just a rim runner and not that much more. And that was a poor pass by the Beijing guard. And Shanghai gets a 2-point opportunity, and they take advantage with a quick cut to the basket and a left-handed layup.
Shanghai's playing very well, executing very well with after the coaching change, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, the coaching change was accompanied by declarations that they're going to try to build the confidence of some of their young players and figure out the rotation and chemistry a little bit because, as we said before, they're definitely out of the playoff picture. Their current record entering this game is 10-24, so the top 11 teams have a roughly 595 winning percentage, and the 12th team is a little bit worse, but still a couple of games ahead of Shanghai. Given that Shanghai started this restart with a 1-3 record, I think a lot of the team itself and fans have given up hope on this season at the very least.
Yeah, and just to provide a little bit more historical context with Shanghai, they've generally been a middling team in the CBA, except for 3 good Yao years, where they've made it 3 years in a row to the finals, lost 2 of them and won the 3rd time and won the championship, and thereafter Yao Ming took his talents to the NBA. But even after that, they had Jimmer Fredette, who was basically leading the league in scoring and was the league MVP, and they were still very much just kind of finishing around the middling level of a playoff team and not getting very deep into the postseason.
Yep, Beijing gets the ball off the defensive backboard, and Udo actually takes a couple of dribbles before handing it off to a guard who was looking to make a play without really securing the ball and gets it knocked out of his hands. And he trips the Shanghai player as both were going for the ball. So the ball ends up back in Shanghai's hands, who has a 4-point lead with 17.7 seconds left in the first quarter.
Yeah. I mean, despite the difference in rankings this season, I think any Beijing-Shanghai matchup, it's just like any big city rivalry.
Yeah, it's like
New York
versus
LA.
Boston. Yeah,
or
or
you can
LA.
say Boston. I mean, there's just these big city rivalries that, the fan base gets really into, even though there are no fans at this game.
Yeah, speaking of which, there's 3.3 seconds left, so we'll get into this fan situation a little bit later. Let's see if Beijing is able to cobble up any significant attack at the basket with such little time left. Nope, the shot was launched after the buzzer sounds and misses anyway, so we end the quarter with a 21-17 score in favor of Shanghai. And we come back to the second quarter between the Beijing Ducks and the Shanghai Sharks as Beijing holds the ball. And as Steve mentioned before, Beijing has both foreign players in the game now, as we see Jeremy Lin with a high-arching long 2-pointer to cut the deficit to 2 points.
If it was playing the NBA, that'd be the worst shot to take.
It still is the worst shot to take, but maybe we'll take this opportunity to explain the foreign player rule a little bit. Any one team can have up to, 3 foreign players on its roster, but any specific game, they can only have 2 foreign players active. And maybe, Steve, you can tell our friends about how those players are allowed to play on the game, as we see Jeremy Lin drop the ball off to his foreign player partner, Udo, for an easy dunk.
Yeah, and so normally the rule is that your 2 foreign players are allowed to play 6-man quarters, with the special rule that only one of them can be on the court during the 4th quarter. You can substitute them in and out during the 4th quarter, but only 1 foreign player is allowed during the 4th quarter. And so the special rule during the restart is because many teams, their foreign players were not able to travel back to mainland China. There's one extra special rule, which is that if your opponent has no foreign players active, then your 6-man quarters gets cut down to 4.
Yeah.
So, for example, in the previous games that we watched, neither Beijing's opponents had a foreign player active, and so Jeremy and Ude basically had to sub in and out for each other during the game. But I'm pretty excited because this is our first opportunity to see both of them on the court at the same time, given that the Shanghai team, he's actually not even on the court right now, but he's active. Number 22, Ray McCollum, is in the game.
Yeah. So we see Shanghai force up a shot, and Udo gets the easy rebound, and Beijing is back on the offense.
He's going to go coast to coast.
Nope. All right. That's a pretty play, but Jeremy Lin's 3-pointer rings long from the left wing, and Shanghai comes back. And also an open three. That was a very strange shooting
It
motion.
was a strange shooting motion.
It feels like a very physically involved shooting motion.
Yeah.
You're really flinging
There's
yourself.
a lot of oomph into that.
Yeah.
He made it, so that's all that matters.
Yeah, and Shanghai now holds a 3-point lead. Jeremy Lin holds the ball up top as we see his backcourt partner Fang Shuo, number 8, is off the court, and Jeremy Lin gets into the lane, keeps his man on his hip, and manages a relatively easy layup. A few times that we've seen him get into the lane in the last 3 games, he's taken a lot of physical contact, so that last one is a pleasant view for all Beijing fans.
But, I think we haven't seen a lot of CBA so far, but of the games that we've watched, it does seem like Jeremy is one of the few guards who can get into the paint and keep his dribble and take his time to make something happen or find an open teammate. A lot of the players dribble into the paint and just, I don't think they really plan what they do next.
Yeah, they either get into the air, kind of like Eric Bledsoe style, or they just keep dribbling without looking up and miss easy pass opportunities. And there's a third option, which is that they see the passing opportunities and then, they're not crisp enough with their pass, or not creative enough and get their passes easily intercepted, which actually happens to me a lot on the court, so I'm not one to judge.
Yeah, that is a hard block.
Yeah, and that was number 10, our favorite 6'10" shooting guard.
Yes.
And you see this replay that we're watching right now, right? That's not a particularly advanced dribble move. It's just a simple dribble right, cut, crossover under the legs to the left. But I think in the CBA, that's also something we've seen. The players, they don't need necessarily extremely fancy dribble moves to free themselves. And Guai Lun, who we saw with the Liaoning team with a pretty good handles, is easier or able to get into the lane with much more ease than these other typical CBA point guards. Yep.
There you go.
So
there you go. Good pass.
Yeah, see, that's a very advanced pick and roll positioning for the CBA, as Udo was able to threaten the defender, or Jeremy Lin's defender, without losing his own footwork to get free, and he got a very easy shot indeed.
Yeah,
as we see.
I didn't realize how much run he got in Utah the last 2 seasons. He played about 120 games for Utah the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, Utah had some serious injury issues. I mean, Gobert had several bouts with like knee sprains and MCL, grade 2 MCL sprain, so Udo was forced onto the court. And we're back as we see Beijing with a 1-point lead with 7 minutes and 49 seconds to go in the second quarter. As Steve mentioned up top, this is going to be probably a low-scoring game, and we saw that with the final score in the first quarter, and that trend has continued. We see that Shanghai scrambled, losing their game. As you see, Max Zhang from Shanghai is back.
Yeah.
I believe this guy is actually 7'3",
yeah,
or 7'2" or 7'3". He's definitely one of the more physically gifted Chinese centers we've seen.
He is actually the tallest player that ever played basketball for Berkeley.
Yeah.
For UC Berkeley. Yeah, he played at Cal for 2 years, his freshman and sophomore year. Like I said, the tallest player ever to suit up for the Cal Bears. And, for his 2 seasons in the NCAA, I think he was kind of a end-of-bench guy. Over his 2 seasons, he played about 350 minutes of court time. He had some high moments. On a kind of per 40-minute basis, his stats were pretty good. But I think it was a great experience for him. And now he's kind of a veteran in the CBA, and he's actually the captain of the Shanghai Sharks.
Yeah, and he has a place in the Chinese national team, if nothing for his size and ability to defend the basket. As we see Shanghai hit a top of the key long 2-pointer to bring the lead back, or take the lead back. But I think Max, he probably is quite dominant in the CBA, but in the NBA his athleticism is still somewhat wanting.
Yeah, even in college, right? I mean, like you said, he actually led the CBA in blocks in 2014 and 2018.
Yeah.
So he is a very good rim protector. He's been injured actually this whole season. He's actually only played these 4 games during the season. This is the only 4 games he's played so far.
Yeah.
So he's, he starts obviously, but he doesn't get. He's just getting back into shape. He's got about 16 minutes a game right now.
Yeah. As you talk about him, actually, I paid attention to his movements on the court going down into the offensive end, and he clearly knows what he's doing, right? So when he sets a pick for his man, he quickly makes his way to the painted area to make sure that he opens up the lane for his guard, and he has very decisive activity, which is not something we always see with these Chinese players.
That's right.
But on defense, I think he is definitely laboring a little bit to get back, and his side to side movement is a little bit slower than what we're used to watching if we are NBA fans. Okay, that was a rough shot.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Did that
too
count?
bad. No, I think it was too late. It's number 77 from Beijing. He didn't touch rim on his layup attempt, gets the ball back, and gets a turnaround three-pointer from the baseline, but maybe just a...
That again sounds like something I would do. Don't touch rim on my layup attempts. Yeah, because of the obviously the pandemic globally, we're missing a lot of playing basketball.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how my jumper is these days. Probably about the same.
Yeah, I mean, Steve is 6'3" with very long arms, and in pickup basketball, especially in Beijing, he's like a center. He's like a Chris Bosh. And we see that in terms of fundamentals, I mean, Udo, as we mentioned again before, he's in there for his defense, and he's quite effective. He's able to basically get all the defensive rebounds and change shots when he's in the area. So we see that he picks up the defensive rebound and the foul on Max Zhang in that last possession, and the score has been stuck on 28-27 for nearly 2 minutes now.
Yep. I still like to see them get the ball to Jeremy a little bit.
I think they want to save Jeremy a little bit, and I can understand, but I also see that Feng Shuo is back, and this is basically your starting lineup except for Udo being in the game.
Yeah, I mean, but this is probably their best five here.
Yep. Yeah, so see all of the players, offensive players on that one half side of the court, and that's difficult spacing, to say the least. So Beijing swings the ball around to Zhai Xiaochuan, who gets a wide open wing three. And 4 Shanghai players are under the basket, but Udo gets his hand on the rebound, but couldn't control the ball, and Shanghai comes back.
I still think that Beijing should go to the Jeremy Lin Udo pick and roll. Like, take advantage of having both your foreign players on the court. And use them, because we saw that really nice pick and roll earlier.
Yeah, I think the two of them definitely are two of the most experienced players on the court. We see Ray McCollum get into the paint and draws a foul.
Yep. Is that our 6'10",
Yep.
6'6"?
6'10" guy, Dong Hanlin.
Who looks like who's listed as a guard?
Yeah, I think there's something wrong with the stat sheet. We'll have to look into it. But
it's all right. We have stat sheets this time.
Yeah.
It's a market improvement.
And this is another observation I want to make. For whatever reason, a lot of these CBA free throw lines, the offensive team just don't put players up. Maybe it's just a sign of confidence. Or maybe these guys just want to conserve some energy.
I actually have a question for our viewers. I'm sure most people generally watch the NBAs. I'm just curious what people think about the uniforms in the CBA.
Yeah.
Leave us a comment if you're a fan of the Beijing uniforms or the Shanghai uniforms. I kind of like the Beijing ones. I'm thinking about getting one myself.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
You're not a fan?
So when we were watching, Ray McCollum missed both free throws uncharacteristically, as he's a 76% free throw shooter. An offensive foul as Zhai Xiaochuan lowered his shoulder.
2 guys.
Yeah. So the point guard Luo Xudong might have gotten taken out like a bowling pin there, and that must have really hurt. Yeah. He got hit right in his knee. So as I was saying, when we were looking at the shots towards the baseline during those free throws, we mentioned this a couple of times before. The CBA has put a lot of player jerseys on these empty seats, which is a nice touch.
Yeah.
And as we look at this injury action on the court, I wanted to mention another thing. Did you know, Steve, that the home court for the Shanghai Sharks has a capacity of just a little over 5,900 seats? So we alluded to this a little bit in the first game that we did. These CBA teams are kind of used to playing in these lower capacity gyms, so having an empty gym may not impact them as much. as like an NBA player who's used to 20,000 rabid fans screaming at the top of their lungs, going from that to like an empty gym, AAU style environment will be a big change.
Yeah, so I think that's correct. There's a couple anecdotes I can share. So I remember like when Beijing was on the rise with Marbury, they used to play in a very small gym.
Yeah.
But as they got better, they played in a bigger arena. So their home court was it was in Shogun Arena. It was very far outside the city. It was like in the burbs.
Yeah.
And it maybe sat 6,000 at most. And then, but once they got into the postseason, they held it at MasterCard Arena, which was what it was called at the time. But I mean, it seats like 20,000, and so.
And that was the arena built for the Beijing Olympics when know LeBron and the others got the gold for USA.
So I think it's probably similar with Shanghai. They probably have a quote-unquote less expensive home court. Oh, wow.
Wow, yeah, we see Luo Xudong get taken off with a stretcher. That knee injury looks painful. And we can also see, a sign of the pandemic, that situation that we're in, these medics with their personal protective equipment and masks on their faces. So just, again, another reminder that we are in a COVID situation.
Oh, that looks painful.
Yeah, so this man down is a 32-year-old point guard, Luo Xudong, 6'2", and 187 pounds.
Oh.
Yeah, he got hit squarely in his right knee.
Yeah.
So he's a pretty important player for them. Played 30 games, started 28 before the restart, of course. I think there are maybe a couple of games missing after the restart on the stat sheet. And he averaged nearly 28 minutes a game, 9.4 points per game, and just about 2.5 rebounds and 2.7 assists, with 1.1 steals. So he's an important rotational player for Shanghai, and hopefully all the best to him, and hopefully this doesn't really hurt Shanghai's overall team effectiveness that much.
Yeah, I think, just through that television we saw, a little bit of the arena, as Frank was saying, there's jerseys in the bleachers, there's stuffed animals in the bleachers.
Yeah.
The other game we saw like a scoreboard that was divided into many screens with fans watching from home.
Yeah.
Actually, I heard that MLB is going to try something similar. Like for the San Francisco Giants, they're going to have their fans on basically screens sitting in these seats. So, it'll be fun. It'll be creative. We'll see what Disneyland does for the NBA in terms of putting things in the items or people or, simulations in the seats.
Yep, we see Begin with I guess Udo went over to try to interfere with the shot, and his man, Dong, gets the offensive rebound put back, and Shanghai now finally scores. I mean, the last time we had a score was in the 7-minute 50 mark, and now it's 3 minutes and 18 seconds left in the game, and finally Shanghai puts up 2 more points with a 30-27 lead.
Oh, there you go.
Yep. Jeremy and Udo had a little pick and roll action. Jeremy pulled the ball back out with enough space to launch the ball to Udo for an easy tip dunk.
It's automatic with these two.
Yeah, but
I don't know why they're not going to this more.
I think the defense was a little bit lax too. McCollum didn't stick with Jeremy Lin, and the defender Dong, the center.
How many other pick and rolls have we seen? Right, that's 2. I mean, it's just like they're so much more experienced and poised, and they just know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's just nice to see.
Yeah.
Looks like NBA basketball.
I hope NBA basketball isn't like this when we start watching.
Coast to coast.
All right, so Jeremy Lin leads the charge with 1 defender back, and he forces up a bit of a, I don't know if you call it a hook. He tries to put the ball off the basket. It didn't manage to score, and I believe Zhai Xiaochuan, number 20, the 6'8" small forward from Beijing, was called for an over-the-back foul, trying to get to the offensive rebound. And now he sits down. With his 4th foul. That's an unfortunate stat line. 0 for 2 and
3 turnovers
and 4 fouls. And Shanghai tries another pick and roll as Udo breaks it up with his right foot. So we put 14 seconds back on the shot clock, and side out of bounds for Shanghai.
Yeah, so maybe we should take this opportunity to just talk about the restart.
Yeah.
The setup.
Yes, definitely. So if you listen to our previous two games, you might remember some of this. If you're joining us for the first time, the CBA has 20 teams this season and a total of 46 games for each team. Just when, before the Chinese New Year's break for the CBA, we got to the 30th game. So right after that, we had a 4-month hiatus, and the CBA decided afterwards to basically complete the regular season. So we will finish with 46 games, and that's divided up into 2 sessions of 2 weeks each, where the teams get together and play fairly intensively, 8 games over 2 weeks. As with the regular season in a regular setting, the CBA doesn't have back-to-backs, but in this case, as you can imagine, 8 games over 14 days, there are going to be a couple of sets of back-to-back. So this is an interesting indication for our NBA fans what might happen in the NBA when they get into the Orlando bubble.
Yeah, we saw another Jeremy Udo pick and roll that led to a Jeremy jump shot, and then a Feng Shui Udo pick and roll that led to it wasn't quite as well executed, but Feng Shui found another open jump shot. He didn't make that one, unfortunately, but
yeah.
Wow, Li Gen trying to, that's not Li Gen.
So now Jeremy Lin's foul sends the Shanghai player to the line. As Shanghai holds a 1-point margin over Beijing. Yeah, that free throw line jumper for Jeremy is quite automatic. He's a solid free throw shooter, and when you're in motion and able to jump up, I guess it makes it a little bit easier still. So that's a solid shot that he can always get when he has Udo setting that screen for him.
Yeah, that's a nice combo there. I kind of missed the opportunity to see the Justin Hamilton Jeremy Lin pick and roll,
because that would open up the pick and pop opportunity as well and give Jeremy even more space to get into the lane.
And they used to be teammates with the Brooklyn Nets, so they've got already a little rapport.
Yeah. All right, ball comes up as Shanghai shows zone, and Beijing tries to break it with the pass to the corner 3, but player didn't take the opportunity as we end up with Jeremy trying to get into the lane again. He loses his footing, but is bailed out with a foul. Okay, the pass goes straight into Udo, who's just outside the charge line, and he easily lays it up with his long arms and gives Beijing another 2 points.
Yeah, Udo's had a interesting career. He was actually playing in Europe for a couple of years, and they actually won the EuroLeague championship.
Ooh, did you see that big block from behind?
I missed it.
Yeah.
And he was the MVP of the EuroLeague finals.
Yeah.
So there's some real talent there.
He's a very solid player. We mentioned in the first broadcast, he's actually a very early round draft pick. I believe he was number 6 overall.
By the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, and he's quite athletic, right, at 6'10", with some strength. But unfortunately, I think his offensive game never quite developed into what they were hoping for. Well, now that we are back, we can take a look at the stats. Udo has taken 9 shots. It's a little bit higher for him than what we've seen, but of course he also has gotten more game action than we've seen before. And he hit 5 of them for 10 points, and he has 6 rebounds and 1 beautiful block from behind. Shanghai takes the ball from the side out of bounds. And they get it into Li Gen, who passes it to McCollum. Yep. Off-balance 3-pointer from the wing that misses as Beijing takes the final possession.
You know what I want to see on the last possession, Frank?
Let me guess. Pick and roll between Udo and Jeremy Lin?
Yeah, why not? Go to it.
I think somebody might have just slapped Jeremy Lin to get another foul.
They weren't in the bonus, so I think that's a good foul.
Yeah. But now that they're missing one of their key guards, they might want to start counting their guard foul numbers, foul count. You don't want to get into. Ooh, that was a beautiful shot for Jeremy Lin, leaning against his defender and screaming, as we can hear that as Beijing finally squeezed back to the lead. Okay, we come back. Unfortunately, as you see on the screen, it's already 30 seconds into the second half. But obviously, the scoring hasn't changed. Beijing still holding on to that 35-34 lead. And again, as our prophet Steve mentioned at the top of the game, this is likely going to be a low-scoring game. And as half game has passed, and neither team has gotten over 35 points.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on a little bit on the substitution. You know, we basically saw Beijing use a single foreign player substitution in quarter one, and then using a double foreign player substitution in quarters 2 and 3, and that's your 5, and they'll get one more in the 6th.
Yeah.
They'll use their 6th in the 4th quarter.
Yeah, and we see both foreign players make an impact on this particular possession as Udo knocks the offensive rebound back into the hands of Jeremy Lin, who comes in for a 20-footer off the wing, and he gets knocked down for a 2+1 opportunity. So, again, during our intro, we mentioned that we will talk about the histories of these two teams a little bit. We mentioned in the second quarter about how obviously there's always going to be a Beijing versus Shanghai rivalry. For anybody who is maybe a little bit familiar with China, Beijing is the capital and the political center of China, whereas Shanghai is more of the commercial center of China. Most of these, major international businesses have their headquarters, and a lot of financial institutions as well have their headquarters in Shanghai. So it's definitely a bustling city. And Beijing, on the other hand, has a little bit more history and definitely headquarters for a lot of multinational companies as well, because they need the government relationship that they can get here in Beijing.
So we should also add that Frank and I have been living in Beijing, Frank for about 15 years and myself for about 10 years. And so, Beijing, we're not biased during the game, but we definitely probably know a little bit more about the Beijing team, just having spent more time in this city and watched it and kind of read about it growing over the years.
Yeah, and we see a beautiful pick and roll play between Fang Shuo and Udo, as Udo is definitely making his presence felt in this game. And Beijing has pushed the lead to 4 points, which, given the pace that both teams are playing at, I don't want to say they're necessarily pulling away, but at least they're showing a little bit more life. Come on, man! They took
4-point lead.
They took 5 minutes to score one basket in the second quarter.
That's true. But maybe a little bit to talk about the history of these teams. A little bit, as I was saying, when I first came to Beijing, they were kind of perennial bottom dwellers and always last place. And that really changed with the arrival of Stephon Marbury.
Yeah, he definitely put Beijing basketball on the map.
Oh, yeah. And we should also mention Randolph Morris. He was a really effective big for Marbury as a partner and could shoulder a lot of the scoring load, which is not what you typically see from the foreign bigs in the CBA.
Yeah. We mentioned in the previous game as well, when Chinese or CBA teams get American players, there are 2 or 3 major types, right? One is the guard or wing type that's able to, their number one attribute needs to be scoring. You need to be able to get a bucket no matter what the situation is. Even if you have 3 guys hanging on your body, you need to get that basket. So that's number 1. And then number 2 is bigs.
Yep.
Obviously, earlier on, these bigs tended to be more either back to the basket or at least blue-collar players who are able to get their scores mostly off of offensive rebounds and such. And Udo is an example of this. But obviously, recently, we've got players like Hamilton who's able to hit the 3 from the big position to open up more strategy for these players or for these teams.
Yeah. That was a really nice 3-point shot by Jai Xiaochar.
Yeah. So just another name that American basketball fans may know, the Shanghai big who wasn't able to make it back to Shanghai for this restart is Domantas Motiejūnas, who played for Houston for a couple of years. 7-1 Eastern European Croatian, I believe, center. Let me just double check.
Yeah, he was quite good in the CBA.
Okay, we are back from break, and during the break I looked it up really quickly. I guess I should have known from the way his name is spelled, but Motiejūnas is Lithuanian, not Croatian. I apologize for that. And we see Shanghai, Liga number 3 trying to post up, and he's actually much smaller than Zhai Xiaochun, but he's trying to post him up, and the ball gets swung around, and McCollum cuts into the basket and gets a pretty clean layup. But Beijing currently holds a 6-point lead. Out there we see that Udo, although his first shot didn't quite make it to past the rim, he gets the ball back, and Jeremy Lin gets another opportunity, and another 2+1 opportunity, in fact. And as he makes his way to the free throw line, maybe Steve, you can also tell our listeners or our audience a little bit about the history of the Shanghai team.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned before, really just those 3 years with a dominant Yao. I mean, Yao played 5 years in the CBA. His first year he was 17 years old, and he averaged 10 and 9, which is amazing for a 17-year-old playing in the professional league. But by his third season, I mean, he was a solid, 20 and 12 guy, which is really, really good in the CBA. But then, his fourth and fifth seasons in the CBA, he was dominant. He was averaging close to 30 and 20 rebounds and 5 blocks a game his last 2 seasons. And in his final season in the NBA, he led Shanghai to their only championship before going to the NBA, and we know what kind of player he was in the NBA.
So Shanghai, this team has been in existence since 1996, so that's 25 years, and they've only had that one championship.
And recently they had Jimmer, and they brought a lot of hope to the city. They thought he would really make a difference, and I mean, from an individual performance perspective, 2 seasons in the CBA, averaging 37 points a game. He had a game where he scored 70 points, and 40 of that came in the fourth quarter, and they still lost by 1. It was crazy. I mean, he scored half his team's points, and more than half his team's points, and so unfortunately they just didn't have the good. What you really need is the Chinese role players around him, right? And so that's one thing that after Yao left Shanghai is they just haven't had good Chinese players.
Yeah. So as we are talking, Beijing has really pulled away a little bit, especially with the scoring pace of this game. After this Jeremy Lin long 2-pointer, they now lead 52-39, so a 13-point deficit for Shanghai with a quarter and a half to go. And McCollum, as far as a point guard goes, he has good handles. He's a solid player, but he is not your Stephon Marbury or Fredette type that can always get you 20 points whenever you want to, even if he averages a little bit over 20 points per game in the CBA action he's played in thus far.
It's actually been a pretty interesting pickup because actually both McCollum and Jeremy aren't your prototypical scoring guards in that the CBA looks for with its foreign players, and they're more floor generals. McCollum is 5th in the CBA in terms of assist to turnover ratio, so he's a very good floor general, but they're not looking to score first. And I don't know if this is a change in if it's just coincidence or if there's actually a change in what CBA teams are looking for out of their foreign guards now, but it's kind of nice to see actually. I just think unfortunately for McCollum, he just doesn't have enough supporting pieces around him. He doesn't have a Udo around him to really showcase his guard skills.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that before the break we didn't really watch enough. Ooh, missed. Gimme.
Yeah. It's a nice outlet pass though.
Yeah. Oh, another rebounding foul. As Ligon drops to the floor.
Yeah, Ligon is actually one of the players that connects these two teams and their story. He actually started his CBA career in Shanghai, and he played 2 seasons for Shanghai. But then he really blossomed into an all-star in Qingdao, where he was averaging about 17 points a game with Qingdao, which is really good for a Chinese player. Became an all-star, became a player on the national team, and then at kind of his peak prime, he joined Beijing and helped them win 3 championships in 4 years. And now this is his first season back in Shanghai. It's kind of funny. His only times he hasn't averaged double figures in the CBA is for his 3 seasons with Shanghai.
Yeah.
So they got him in his 2 young years and now his kind of older years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Speaking of which, I wanted to mention that Vince Carter had retired recently.
Vince.
He's got many interesting statistics to his name other than obviously his dunks and his all-star appearances. He's the only player in the NBA to have played in 4 different decades.
That sounds a lot.
22 years, man.
Yeah.
As he retired, I believe he's the last player in the current NBA to be older than me. So I feel definitely some nostalgia as we see
Vince
it.
can still dunk, Frank.
Yeah, I see this and stop looking at me. I'm 5'9".
Yeah. For my friends who know me, they know that I have two basketball idols. One is Michael Jordan, and the other is Vince Carter. Part of that is I'm also a UNC Carolina graduate, and part of that is also, I spent my younger years, my elementary school years in Toronto, and so I'm a huge Raptors fan. They won the championship last year, which got to give a shout out. And then Vince just being the Carolina connection and also the Raptor connection. I'm just a huge fan. I've been fortunate enough in the last couple of years in my startup life to have met and interviewed many NBA superstars. And the only person that I really got nervous for was when I got the chance to interview Vince. And I'm happy for him, but I'm really sad that we don't get to see him playing basketball anymore. Even though the last couple of years he was really just shooting threes.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get into Vince a little bit more, but this is the first timeout that we've talked through, and I think our fans or our listeners, audience who are watching this might be able to see that in the Chinese TV coverage of these games, they can actually get close enough to get the strategy from the coaches. Obviously, it's in Chinese, and most of our audience may not be able to understand, but this is definitely not something we see in the Western coverage of the NBA, right? You would never hear what the coach actually says unless it's like an audio assist where you get the "let's go," hustle type of
the most meaningless. Like it could have just been a random fan saying those things. Box out.
Yeah. And also we saw that quick statistic. Jeremy Lin has put up 24 points.
Playing really well.
Given your observation earlier, maybe this is a good sign for the Beijing team. But going back to Vince a little bit, a couple of more interesting statistics for you guys. He's the last player to have played for Dean Smith in the NBA. Future NBA stars coming out of North Carolina. They're still from the fruits of that tree, but no longer directly disciples of Dean Smith. And the other statistic that really surprised me was that somebody tallied this up in Reddit, but Vince has played with or against 38% of all players that had ever played in the NBA. It's quite an incredible statistic.
That seems high.
22,
I think someone needs to fact check this.
No, 22-year career, man. He's played against or with over 1,000 players, and there's only been a little over 4,000 in all of the history of the NBA. So there's that.
Does it matter that you played with? Because if you play seasons, you kind of play against everybody anyway.
Yeah, but still, I mean, most guys play a 10-year career, right? Especially if you're in the earlier parts of the NBA when there's 12 teams in the league. You don't really, get that large cross section. But the 38%, man, that's quite that's a lot. Impressive statistic. And also, I think he's one of 5 players to have averaged 25 points, to have totaled 25,000 points, 5,000 rebounds, 4,000 assists, and 500 three-pointers.
Yeah, Vince is a legend.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, there was some debate about whether or not he's a Hall of Famer. I think
I don't get it.
No-brainer.
How can he not be in the Hall of Fame?
I think it's not. We always talk about the Hall of Fame as part of his statistics, some of those counting numbers, but his influence on the game.
Exactly. Yeah.
His
popularity during his heyday was maybe, other than guys like Yao Ming who have a whole country behind him. It's pretty.
Well, he had a whole country behind him too.
But he's not Canadian.
Right?
He played for the Canadian team, but he's not Canadian. All right, maybe we get into the game action a little bit. We see that Beijing gets another corner three-pointer from Zhai Xiaochuan, assisted by Fang Shuo, as they've really increased their lead now to 17 points. And Shanghai is still fighting hard, battling hard. We see a pretty little pick-and-roll play for Dong to attack the basket, and he gets fouled by Udo.
The guard who looks like he's 6'10", but only listed as 6'6".
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. So the last three-pointer was a pass from Zhai Xiaochuan and shot by Fang Shuo, and I got the two names reversed. Part of the reason why we keep on broadcasting Beijing games is the fact that we want to get some continuity so I can start getting to know these names a little better. I don't want to keep on calling numbers without really knowing much about these players. Unfortunately, when the NBA was playing, I didn't really have the time or energy to follow the CBA too closely. So, again, we're not professionals. Hopefully, this is just something fun for not only us, but for you guys to watch us as well.
Yeah, we'll try to pick different teams as well. I think like familiarity is helpful for the fans, but also for us. And, you know, I guess you can say, you know, it is the hometown team for us.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we'll see. We'll see what game we pick next. If fans have a particular player or team that they're interested in, they can leave a comment, and we could schedule around it.
Yeah, and that reminds me, the first game we covered was between the Beijing Ducks and the Liaoning Flying Leopards. And the Flying Leopards actually had a better record than Beijing going into this hiatus, and they were considered the stronger team. But because most of their foreign players, or let's say none of them, made their way back, and they had to add
OJ
Mayo, yeah, on the bounce turnaround, their chemistry wasn't there, and they actually also had a 1-3 record coming into today, which was significant enough that their head coach actually quit the team.
Oh, he quit. He didn't get fired.
He didn't get fired. He quit the team.
Wow.
I mean, I saw this little GIF during the last loss that they had. He was so frustrated because coming into a timeout, he had his little board with strategies and everything, and nobody came to him to talk to him, and he angrily tossed it aside. And after that, he fired up his players a little bit, who made a run but still couldn't quite bounce back against a weaker Nanjing team. So that was unfortunate.
That's a big news because that coach is like a local legend. I mean, he was a star player for them in their glory years, and he's actually the uncle of their current star player, Guai Alan Guo. So that's I thought he got fired, which I would have been really surprised that the team would cut someone like that. I mean, he's like he can have that seat for as long as he wants, and I guess for him to quit, I guess that makes a little bit more sense.
And I also read, again, we're not CBA experts, so just going off what I read, he has been involved with the organization for 12 years after he retired, and he's been going back and forth into this head coaching position for three times now. So I guess this isn't the first time that he's done this. But maybe
he's trying to prove a point, Frank.
Yeah, but also, you know, you'd be surprised to hear that the new head coach that they have, as we see a dunk by
Max
Zhang. Yeah, so the new head coach that they've decided to use is a player who just retired from the CBA last year. Very young player turned head coach. And unfortunately, this guy, I don't have his name in front of me right now, but unfortunately, as we see another beautiful inside pass to Udo, who makes a dunk, assisted by Jeremy Lin. So this player, because he wasn't originally in the bubble, he actually needs to go through his quarantine before he can join the team.
Okay.
So this is, again, you know, maybe some interesting reference for our NBA fans. You know, in the case that we keep on talking about players getting COVID in the bubble, but what happens if your head coach gets one, right?
Right.
We have some older coaches, guys like Popovich or D'Antoni, Alvin Gentry. These guys are all, I guess, in their almost late 60s, early 70s, and you know, if they get sick, this could be quite significant and maybe as much impact to the team's positioning as the players themselves.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point now that I think about it, because there's also, like, I think within the resort, there's limitations in terms of how many coaches can travel, right, with the team. So if you've only got 3 or 4 coaches and kind of 1 or 2 of them or 3 of them get infected, in an unfortunate event, then you may be down to who knows?
Player coaches, man.
Yeah, I mean,
LeBron finally gets.
LeBron conspiracy theories. Here we go.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great.
All right.
I love it. Watch out, Jason Kidd. It's coming for you.
Frank Vogel, man.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
I'm surprised that the chemistry in the Lakers has been so good this year.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have been saying it's because of Frank Vogel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought? Who would have thunk it?
Yeah, who would have thunk it? So a minute left in the third quarter. Beijing has a 13-point lead as Jeremy Lin backs down Ray McCollum, or not necessarily backs down, but holds the ball. He gets into the lane, actually has separation but does not shoot. Gets the ball out to number 16, takes it in and drops it off to Udo, who is fouled as he tries to go up.
Yeah, this is a great sign for Beijing. I think, you know, the contrast is what we saw with Liao Ning, right?
Yes.
And the frustration is that they just, in that game we saw, they just couldn't get going. They didn't have enough playmakers. I mean, they had two guys, and Beijing just boxed those two guys out.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't find their offense and their offensive flow. So, yeah, great sign for Beijing as they get this restart up and running.
Yeah, you have your basic 9-man rotation and players know their roles. I think this is very important. Unfortunately, given that Udo now is able to play more, we're not really seeing our new favorite Tyreek so much.
Yeah, I was just thinking about him. Our boy Tyreek.
Yeah.
Getting his butt glued to the bench.
Ooh, that was a good defensive play. See Udo with his arm straight up, affecting the shot, and ball comes off to Jeremy, who dumps it off to Zhu Yanxi, who he should have shot that. I'm sorry, he should have shot that. It was in rhythm. He was wide open.
He can shoot.
Yeah, but ball comes back to Jeremy, who loses his man, comes in for about a 10-foot floater, high-arching floater that finds the bottom of the net. McCollum takes an off the dribble 3 to finish the quarter, or misses off the rim, and Beijing takes a 15-point lead into the fourth quarter. Okay, the fourth quarter has started, and it starts off with a breakaway layup for Shanghai, and we can see that they're trying to catch up with full court presses, and that forces Beijing into a early mistake right away. Yeah, I mean, we can see that obviously. Yeah. These CBA players lack some discipline. I mean, I don't remember if you, I don't know if you watched the latest FIBA World Cup.
I was there, yeah.
Yeah, so Zhou Qi, as you might remember, was much maligned in that one, not necessarily deciding game, but a key game for China to basically clear the group stage, right? And Zhou Qi had a very poor pass in the last moments of the game.
Yeah. But that, let's break the press by throwing it as far as way down court like Dan Marino.
Yeah, well, that was a lack of communication between, I think, the two players. Okay, we come back to the action. Beijing had 2 straight turnovers and called an early timeout in the fourth quarter, and now they have a 13-point lead as Shanghai obviously is playing with a little bit more momentum after those 2 good defensive plays. And that last shot brings the ball back, or brings the deficit back to 11 points. See,
I don't know why your small forward is bringing the ball up the court when you've got two guards, or at least you've got Fang Shuo on the court. You've got to give that ball to your point guard.
Yeah, I think this is a lack of experience and composure. And also, if you have your dribble going, keep it going, right?
Yeah.
Don't get yourself trapped in the corner position.
But it's the same thing for the point guard. He's got to be like, give me the ball.
Yeah.
That's my job. It's not your job to be bringing it up.
Maybe he fancies himself a Chinese LeBron. I think he picked up his 5th foul with that last move. And Shanghai comes back and hits another free throw line jumper and more full court press. This time Beijing manages to break it. And Udo is getting... Oh, the ball rolls over the rim and drops in. And finally Beijing is on the board for the fourth quarter with a 66-55 lead.
Oh, nice.
There's another nice block too.
Yeah. Good hesitation, good block, good pass. Shoot that.
Yeah, come on.
What are you doing?
Yeah, he should have shot that Fang Shuo. He had such a wide open shot. I guess he's unselfish. Can't complain that much, but that was not good game control, I think. Okay, Shanghai comes back with a very close range hook shot that rolls around and comes out. Udo clears the rebound, and Beijing brings it up. Udo is helping with the defensive pressure now. He gets the ball just at the elbow, and the elbow jumper goes in.
Ooh, that's my favorite shot too. I'm with you, bud. You think we're going to get to see Jeremy rest the whole quarter? Like last game?
I don't think so. I mean, this game seems to be actually momentum is swinging a little bit. I think they're going to need Jeremy's ability to control the flow of the game.
Yeah. But I think, like, from a strategy perspective, giving Udo, who's been a little bit injured, a little more run, get back in shape, get his legs, might not be a bad thing. And Jeremy had that fall the other game that we watched on his shoulder. So, we'll see how it plays out in the fourth. But like I said, this is a slow-paced game, low-scoring game as it is, and what is it? A double-digit lead right now, 13 points.
Yeah,
it's a decent lead.
A brick on a free throw by number 24 from Shanghai. Ju Mingxin, 6'6" small forward. That guy looks 6'6".
Yeah.
All right, the made free throw allows Shanghai to set up for its full court press again. We can see 3 of their defensive players, 4 of them in the backcourt. So, it's a risky defensive strategy. But I guess who are we to complain? As the first 3 trips down, they were able to manage turnovers.
Yeah. This is see that press was not hard to break. Just clear your guys out.
Yeah. Okay, Beijing inbounds after a silly foul. I guess a touch foul, I would call it. And Fang Shuo drives the lane instead of dumping it off to Udo, maybe some of the defensive players that expected. He takes a left-handed hook shot and gets fouled in the process.
Yeah. Again, Frank, this we've been talking about before, is this offense just looks terrible without Jeremy in the game. And, last game in the fourth quarter, we saw a little Fang Shuo, Udo chemistry there, but, they're just stagnant without Jeremy.
Yeah, I think Fang Shuo, from what we saw even in this game alone, he seems to be a bit too unselfish, right? Which is good when you have NBA quality players who are able to knock down, let's say, wide open over 50% of their three-pointers. But in the CBA, we've seen time and time again, wide open shooters remain very hesitant. And if you as a point guard are not able to be a scoring threat every time you're coming down the court, then it's very difficult for the rest of your supporting cast, as we also seen with Ray McCollum. As much as he has that skills advantage, if not physical advantage over these defenders, he's not able to kick the ball out and allow his players to score.
Oh, Beijing's pressing now.
Yep.
I like it.
They're definitely, I think, getting Shanghai rattled a little bit. But Shanghai manages to get across half court, and they're setting up with 10 seconds to go. Ooh. Okay, that was a extra pass that I would say was a little bit unnecessary, but it ended up in a score, so I guess that's okay.
Giving it to your big in the post. That's okay. There you go. Oh, okay. He got a hand to the ball. Yeah. Ooh. I don't think that was intentional, but it worked.
Yeah. Okay, now the lead is in single digits, a 9-point lead for Beijing. And they are trying to slow the game down. With 8 minutes to go, I think it's not a wise decision to think about early. Pacing. You have to go with the flow of the game.
Shanghai's making a nice little run here to start the fourth.
Yeah. So there's
nice behind the back pass. That was a behind the back dribble turned into a behind the back pass.
It's just a nice behind the back activity. Okay, Li Gen, the small forward that we've talked about repeatedly, is back as Fang Shuo brings the ball into the court. And we see an offensive foul on Udo as he gets a little bit too aggressive setting that pick as Luo Hanchen hits the floor. Yep, definitely poked his butt out.
It's a classic move.
Yeah.
Where they teach you? NBA?
I try that move. How come I never get anybody caught on my butt?
No ass, Frank.
Thanks for that, Steve. All right, McCollum brings the ball up, and Shanghai sets up low post. Li Gen. Oh man.
Oh yeah.
He
showed the rook.
Yeah, man. He completely squeezed.
Look how happy he is.
Yeah, that was a poor defensive play by Zhai Xiaochuan. He has 3 inches on the guy. He's longer, and he didn't even lift his arm as Li Gen took that shot.
But we talked a little bit about their history, right? They were former teammates, playing the same position, and Zhai Xiaochuan basically, from a young prospect, developing into a national team player, took Li Gen's spot. So for him to get one over Zhai Xiaochuan, little Little revenge there.
Yeah, speaking of which, there's a nice young prospect on the Shanghai bench that we've been meaning to talk about.
Yeah. His name's Chris Tang. I don't know if other hoop heads have heard of him. His most notable, I think, attribute, at least in his story, is that he's a Chinese player, and then at a young age went to the U.S. for high school and actually played at Oak Hill Academy. And so I'm sure we've all heard of Oak Hill Academy.
National powerhouse.
Yeah. Kevin Durant, Ty Lawson, Jerry Stackhouse. And so coming out of Oak Hill, he actually got an opportunity to play Division I basketball at UC Riverside. And he only played 1 year before getting an opportunity to turn pro in the CBA. And so he's actually should be his 4th season in the CBA. I don't know exactly why. He may be injured, but he hasn't played at all this season. Last season, he got into the rotation, played 30-some games as a bench player. Numbers weren't that great, but just he was touted out of high school to be the next Jeremy Lin, actually.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite interesting. But just someone to look, just a thought interesting story. Maybe some of the hardcore hoop heads in the U.S. have heard of him, Chris Tang, but unfortunately not in this game.
Oh my. Ooh my. Oh wow. That's a very aggressive defensive and effective defensive play by Udo, who was rewarded with the dunk as he. That was poor defense to begin with as he loses Max Zhang. But Max, I think his explosiveness or lack thereof was on shoulder. He hesitated before he tried to gather the ball and lift off, and Udo knocked the ball out of his hands. Back into a Shanghai player whose shot was blocked by Udo. But that was the previous possession, and we move on as Shanghai hits a wing 3 and brings or knocks or chisels away at the lead, which is at 8 points now. As Fang Shuo briefly had a mismatch with Max Zhang, but he didn't keep his dribble going, so he couldn't take advantage, and ball comes out. Another small to big transaction there as Udo gets an easy left-handed layup as Max was trying to stop the penetrator. Okay, that was McCollum easily beating his man, getting the shot off the backboard.
You could see, even though he's only 6'1", 6'2", he's very comfortable scoring over taller players.
Yeah.
Yeah, length is not a problem for him.
Yeah, I think this is, we talked about this in our first broadcast, right? The Chinese players lacking experience against some of the more explosive or lengthy defensive players, and they haven't really had that experience because in the CBA, they basically give the ball to the foreign player and let them just get out of the way. That's what they do during crunch time, and unfortunately, some of these Chinese guards, as we look back at that gather by Max Zhang, these Chinese guards, you
can see Max's face like, I didn't make it back in time.
Yeah.
It's great. You good? Another post up?
Yeah, another little small short fadeaway. The lead is now down to 6 for Beijing.
What do we tell you about this guy? The round mound of China. One of Frank's favorite players is Charles Barkley, I'd imagine.
I grew up with the Suns during the Kevin Johnson years, and Barkley was traded to Phoenix in '92, as everybody knows, and I was a huge fan. We made it to the finals, got defeated by Michael Jordan, who I hate.
I love you, MJ.
And also Steve Nash, I'm a huge fan of, but let's not get into that too much. Long left-handed 3 that misses, and Beijing gets the long rebound, 2-on-2, and they decide to slow the attack. Udo makes it into the front court and sets a pick, but number 10 doesn't really quite use it. He takes the ball down, swings it around to Zhu Yanxi, who misses the open 3-pointer. Shanghai coming back are playing basically 3-on-5, 4-on-5, finally a full complement of offensive players now.
Oh, that's a tough shot.
Yeah, but that's also good defense by Udo. I think at this point, if Jeremy Lin is quite tired, Udo's defensive effectiveness might be more valuable to Beijing, given that Shanghai really doesn't have offensive attack that can always get to.
Oh, wow.
Ooh. Udo takes
And one.
Yeah, Udo takes Max Zhang one-on-one, backs him down, goes around him, and hooks the ball in for 2+1.
It's a Cal Bear versus a Baylor Bear.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably an example why I think Max is not quite an NBA caliber player. I think maybe his center of gravity is a little high and he's standing way too upright. Right? When a smaller player is able to get into your body like that and knock you off balance, that's just, I don't want to say poor fundamentals specifically, but it doesn't really bode well for his career if he's not able to.
Yeah, but don't forget, I mean, this is his 4th game this entire season. I think
That's
he might
true.
have been injured earlier.
That's true.
He's getting really limited run right now. He's getting about 60 minutes a game.
Yeah, he's just trying to lead Udo out of the painted area. Zhu Yanxi rebounds the miss, and Beijing moves into the front court. Fang Shuo catches and surveys the court. Passes to Udo, who gives it back and sets a little bit of a pick. Oh, finally the pick takes. Beautiful,
nice
beautiful no-look pass to the corner. Three-pointer missed by Zhu Yanxi. Udo had his hands on the ball momentarily before it's knocked loose into the hands of McCollum, who is fouled as he makes his way to the front court. And Beijing slowly has stemmed the bleeding, and now they have a 11-point lead, 80-69, with 3 minutes and 17 seconds left in the game. I think Shanghai obviously is trying to make that final push. It's now or never with these 3 minutes left.
I mean, I think all comebacks need to start with some good defensive possessions. And
yeah, I mean, they obviously had a little bit of a climax during the start of the quarter when they had 3 straight turnovers and
when the full court press was working, which caught Beijing a little bit off guard.
Yeah. I think the defensive players are a little bit tired now, and see the
sloppy.
Okay, Beijing intercepts the Shanghai pass, and Fang Shuo brings the ball into the front court. Zhai Xiaochuan sets a quick pick, gets to the baseline, clears out. Ooh, okay, that was really awful. Number 10 tries to make a dribble move, loses his handle, knocks the ball into his own backcourt for a backcourt violation.
Yeah, I think you're right, Frank. I think we need to see Fang Shuo be more aggressive.
Yeah,
he's a little bit too unselfish and defers a little bit too much.
I think part of the problem is that when these players decide that it's close to the end of the game, somebody needs to take over, they don't even run plays anymore, right? You don't see any off-ball activity. It's just 4 guys standing there waiting for the guy with the ball to make something happen, instead of calling something out and trying to create an opening by using their feet. Okay, I couldn't even tell if that hit rim or not. But McCollum gets the Kerm off the backboard and puts the ball in.
Over.
Yep. He gets and one. And Udo has something to say to the Shanghai player, but I think maybe communication is a bit of a problem. Otherwise, they might be in each other's faces already. Yeah, we see the replay. He had the ball, got knocked out of his hands from behind him, and McCollum was in the right place at the right time.
Wow, 27, 17, and 3. This is a nice stat line.
Yeah, no kidding.
When Jeremy gets to close the game out.
Yeah. I think that's a very wise move. This is a time when you actually need to decide on whether you want to pull the ball back or go to the basket and make something happen. With 2.5 minutes left and hanging on to an 8-point lead. As we see Beijing runs 2 point guards again with Fang Shuo and Jeremy. Easier to break the full court press as Jeremy Lin faces.
I just don't know if Jeremy sat out too long, They kept him out for like 9 minutes.
Yeah. He almost loses the ball, but luckily gets it back. Zhai Xiaochuan hands it back to him again with a second left, and that wild desperation 3 misses the rim by about 1.5 feet.
Yeah, I don't know if that was the greatest substitution. And we should mention that the Beijing coaching change also, or the interim coach, because again, due to travel restrictions, their normal head coach is not in the country, and so they've got an interim coach.
Yeah, coach
for the time being.
Yep. Okay, Shanghai works the ball around for a wide open three by Li Gen, who misses. But again, McCollum, the smallest man on the court, gets the offensive rebound as he takes it to the basket. He is fouled as he tries to cut into this deficit with the clock stopped at 1 minute and 52 seconds.
Yeah.
Wow, he actually
offensive defensive substitution here with Li Gen, trying to save his legs a little bit.
Yeah.
That he's like a 12-year veteran.
Yeah, I mean, at 31 years old, I guess that is a little bit older for the CBA because these players, they still get decent training, but it's not an NBA caliber. And this restart actually, you might not know this, but the hotels that these players are staying at are not exactly equipped for basketball players, right? The beds for Chinese people tend to be no longer than 2 meters, and most of these players don't have like the mattress space to even stretch out. And a lot of their training, their muscle work, their massage work needs to happen in the hallway of these hotels rather than in an actual training room with proper equipment. And a lot of these taller players end up sleeping on the ground because the shorter mattresses just don't cut it. For this is really intense for these players. As opposed to playing 2 games a week, they're playing 4 games a week now with much more subpar training facilities. So this is quite a challenge for them.
Yeah. When you mention like hotels that are not fit for basketball players, I wonder what it's gonna be like at Disneyland.
Yeah.
And which NBA player is gonna get the Cinderella suite,
But I imagine
that'd be pretty funny.
Yeah, I imagine the NBA has thought of all of this. I mean, it's not going to be that hard because these guys are all going to be in the same hotel room for extended periods. For them to just shell out the money to buy new mattresses that fit, right? So, I think even between the NBA and the G League, we know that we'll just talk through this timeout because we're getting close to the end of the game anyway. But we know that even the G League isn't anywhere near the NBA in terms of just their accommodations, right? They take buses or commercial flights everywhere, and they get paid like less than $100,000, maybe like $70,000-$80,000 per year just for a chance to play in the NBA. And that's also leading back to what we were talking about before, why some of these American players are willing to come to China, because some of the better players in China are able to make several $1 million for a shorter season and still be able to make it back in time during obviously non-pandemic times to the NBA for the playoff stretch run. As we see Shanghai facing an 8-point deficit with 1 minute and 24 seconds left. So McCollum has the ball. He takes a couple of dribble moves but misses a longer 2-pointer. Unfortunately, I don't think he's one of those guys known for his outside shots.
Yeah.
That would have really helped. I mean, it's just...
I would have rather seen him take that 3-point shot.
Yeah. Okay, so now they brought Udo right back. As you said, Jeremy might have been a little bit cold, and Fang Shuo should have taken that shot. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But that ended up okay. Udo got another rebound put back. 29 and 18 now.
Yeah. I think that pretty much seals the game.
Yeah.
I think McCollum doesn't have that 3-point shot to really get them back in this game.
Yeah, we should mention that this is a FIBA 3-point line, but still, when you're not known as an outside shooter, as we see McCollum crank
and
another
he keeps
one
pulling
off.
it from those long twos, which I don't understand. Yeah. Well, that's why he's not in the NBA.
Yep, that's why. But he was on my fantasy team for a very brief moment.
I don't know why.
Okay, now Udo is just adding insult to injury.
Oh, yeah.
He brought the ball all the way into the lane from the top of the 3-point line, and we hold for the final 10 seconds for Shanghai's maybe last shot opportunity.
This brings Beijing's record after the restart to 3-2.
Yeah.
Like I said, they are in the thick of the playoff race because the number 3 to number 11 team, I think they're only separated by like 2.5 or 3 games. So
yeah.
Every game, every win is very, very important. So yeah, good win for Beijing.
So yeah, we're happy to bring you another game. Again, let us know in the comments if there's anything in particular you want to know, or if not, maybe let us know if you want to see another Beijing game or just 2 new teams, and we will try to comply as much as possible. But thank you again, and we'll hope to talk to you guys in a couple of days.